Hello everyone and welcome to this review lesson. In this part, we will concentrate on better understanding sentence structures and on improving our skills in crafting sentences. When you know how to vary the kind of sentences you write, you can express your thoughts in the clearest and most interesting way possible. In this part, we will review how to use clauses to develop varied types of well-structured sentences. Clauses are the building blocks of sentences. A clause is a group of words that contains a subject and a verb. Here, ecology is a subject and is a verb, making the sentence a simple sentence or a clause. To protect the environment is not a clause because there is no subject. Because pollution causes cancer is a clause because pollution is a subject and causes is a verb. So we have a clause. After surviving a long illness is not a clause because, again, there is no subject. There are two kinds of clauses, independent and dependent clauses. Academic writers combine these two kinds of clauses to write a variety of sentence types. An independent clause contains a subject and a verb, and often a complement. It expresses a complete thought and can stand alone as a sentence. An independent clause is basically a simple sentence. For example, the sun rose is an independent clause with just a subject and a verb. The next sentence, water evaporates rapidly in warm climate zones is also an independent clause. But in this sentence, water is the subject, evaporates is the verb, and the rest of the sentence is the complement. A dependent clause is formed with a subordinator such as when, if, that, or who. It also has a subject, a verb, and sometimes a complement. A dependent clause does not express a complete thought and cannot stand alone as a sentence. Here are some examples of dependent clauses. When the sun rose, because water evaporates rapidly in warm climate zones. Whom voters elected. If the drought continues for another year. Now I want you to pause your video and take a look at these common subordinators in this chart. Go over them carefully and then play your video again when you're done. Now that we have reviewed dependent and independent clauses, it is time to study the kinds of sentences we can make with these clauses. A sentence is a group of words that you use to communicate your ideas. Every sentence is formed from one or more clauses and expresses a complete thought. The four basic kinds of sentences in English are simple, compound, complex, and compound complex. To get a band score of 7 in your IELTS writing test, you need to be able to use all four sentence types. Now, let's start by looking at simple sentences. A simple sentence is one independent clause. This means your sentence needs a subject and a verb. For example, fresh water boils at 100 degrees Celsius at sea level. Here, fresh water is the subject and boils is the verb. Look at these two examples now. Fresh water boils at 100 degrees Celsius at sea level and freezes at 0 degrees Celsius. Fresh water and salt water do not boil and do not freeze at the same temperatures. Notice that the second sentence has two verbs, boils and freezes. This is called a compound verb. The third sentence has both a compound subject and a compound verb, because there are two subjects and two verbs. These three examples are simple sentences because they only have one clause. A compound sentence is two or more independent clauses joined together. There are three ways to join the clauses. You can use a coordinator between two independent clauses to join them together to make a compound sentence. For example, salt water boils at a higher temperature than fresh water. So, food cooks faster in salt water. There are 7 coordinators. They are also called coordinating conjunctions. You can remember them by the phrase fanboys. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Remember that you need to use a comma after the first independent clause. Pause your video and take a look at these connectors. Remember, you use these connectors to join two independent clauses together to make a compound sentence. Play your video again when you're done. You can use a conjunctive adverb between two independent clauses to join them together to make a compound sentence. For example, salt water boils at higher temperature than fresh water. Therefore, food cooks faster in salt water. Several transition signals such as on the other hand, as a result, and for example, act like conjunctive adverbs. They can connect independent clauses with a semicolon and a comma. This chart lists common conjunctive adverbs and a few transition signals. Please pause your video, take a look at the conjunctive adverbs and their uses, and then look at the examples. Please note their punctuation as you read the examples. Play your video again when you're done. To make a compound sentence, you can also use a semicolon to join independent clauses. Look at this example. Salt water boils at a higher temperature than fresh water. Semicolon. Food cooks faster in salt water. This kind of compound sentence is possible only when the two independent clauses are closely related in meaning. If they are not closely related, they should be written as two simple sentences, each ending with a period. So far, we learned how to make compound sentences. Now a look at complex sentences. Here's a basic complex sentence structure. A complex sentence contains one independent clause, or the main idea, and one or more dependent or subordinate clauses. Independent clauses, or the main clauses, are not dependent on any other clauses and can form sentences on their own. As you know, independent clauses are also called simple sentences, because they can stand alone. Subordinate clauses are dependent on other clauses and can only form sentences by combining with independent clauses. Look at these clauses. It hasn't lasted very long. This is an independent clause. It is also one sentence. I will see you when I get back then. This is an independent clause plus a dependent clause. To add more, the type of dependent clause here is an adverb clause of time. Look at this other one. Will you be at home if I ring you tonight? This one is an independent clause plus an adverbial dependent clause of condition. Now let's look at a few more examples. The guy who came this morning was very polite. This one is an independent clause plus a dependent clause. The dependent clause is an adjective clause which is inside the independent clause. And the other example. I know what you did last night. This one is again an independent clause plus a dependent clause. The dependent clause here is a noun clause since it has occupied the position of the noun of the sentence as an object. Remember, when you have an independent clause plus a dependent clause, you have a complex sentence. There are three types of dependent clauses: noun clauses, adjective clauses, and adverb clauses. First, a look at complex sentences with adverb clauses. An adverb clause acts like an adverb. That is, it tells you about where, when, why, and how. An adverb clause is a dependent clause with a subject and a verb. It may come before or after the independent clause. When it comes before the independent clause, or at the beginning, it is usually separated from the independent clause by a comma. Look at this example. When John looked at the small points, he saw galaxies. Here, since the sentence starts with a dependent clause, it takes a comma. Also, when John looked at the small points is an adverb clause because it shows the time of seeing the galaxies. In other words, it actually shows the time of the verb in our independent clause. Look at this now. John saw galaxies when he looked at the small points. Here, a comma is not needed between the two clauses since the independent clause comes before the dependent clause. Here are some examples of adverb clause markers or subordinators. The markers are since, by the time, while, when, after, before, as if, as though, so that, because, as long as, although, whereas, if, only if, and unless. I want you to pause your video. Try to remember these markers and make a sentence with each one in your head. Then continue the video. Now an example. It was difficult to observe the stars before the telescope was invented. Here, before the telescope was invented is an adverb clause because it shows the era of observing the stars. Another example. Ancient people used the stars as if they were calendars. Here, as if they were calendars is an adverb clause because it shows the way ancient people used the stars as calendars. Now I look at complex sentences with adjective clauses. An adjective clause contains a subject and a verb, naturally, because it is a clause. An adjective clause is a subordinate or dependent clause, so it must be connected to an independent clause. An adjective clause describes a noun. They begin with a relative pronoun such as who, whom, whose, which, that, or a relative adverb such as when or where. For example, the girl who is sitting next to me is my wife. Who is sitting next to me is an adjective clause, which describes which girl we're talking about. Another example. This is the place where we used to meet. Where we used to meet is an adjective clause because it describes the place of meeting. Now let's look at two more examples of dependent adjective clauses. Men who are not married are called bachelors. Last year, we vacationed in Cozumel, which features excellent scuba diving. Now we look at complex sentences with noun clauses. A noun clause is a dependent clause. It has a subject and a verb and can be used like a noun, either as a subject or an object. Here's an example of a noun clause as a subject. His discovery was important. His discovery is a noun, and it is the subject of the sentence. Now look at this sentence. What he discovered was important. Here, what he discovered is a noun clause. Since the meaning of the sentence is not complete on its own, this is a dependent clause. And since it has occupied the position of the noun as a subject, we call this kind of dependent clause a noun clause as subject. When a noun clause acts as a subject, the subject of the independent clause following it is omitted. Here, the original independent clause was, it was important, but it is omitted here. So we have what he discovered, which is a dependent clause, plus was important, which is the independent clause. And as a result, you have a complex sentence. Now look at this simple sentence. People believed his discovery. Here, his discovery is a simple noun, which is the object of the verb believed. If we replace our object, his discovery, with a noun clause as an object, what he discovered, we would have the combination of an independent clause and a dependent clause, which would be a noun clause as object here. Look at this example. People believed what he discovered. What he discovered here is a noun clause. It is the object of the verb believed. Noun clauses can begin with different subordinators like when, where, why, how, who, whom, what, which, whose, whether, if, and that. Consider this complex sentence. I don't know what your name is. This complex sentence consists of two different sentences. First, I don't know your name, and second, what is your name? When we combine these two separate sentences together, we come up with a new version. I don't know what your name is. Here, I don't know your name is an independent clause, and what your name is a dependent clause, or it's specifically called a noun clause. It is actually a noun clause because it has taken the position of the object of the clause as a noun. Another example. I don't know if they believed him. Here, I don't know is an independent clause, and if they believed him is a dependent clause and a noun clause. The noun clause, again, has taken the position of the object of the sentence. A noun clause begins with a WH question word, that, whether, and sometimes if. A noun clause acts like a noun. It can be either the subject or an object of the independent clause. So far, we've talked about simple, compound, and complex sentences. Now let's take a look at compound complex sentences. A compound complex sentence has at least 3 clauses. 2 are always independent and 1 is dependent. You can use almost any combination of dependent and independent clauses. Just be sure that there is at least 1 dependent clause. In these sentences, you have the independent clauses in green and the dependent clauses in blue. Pause the video and review these sentences and their different parts. As you can see here in the public version of the IELTS writing band descriptors, to get a good mark in the IELTS writing test, you need to use different sentence types. If you can only make a limited range of structures with only a rare use of subordinate clauses, even if all your sentences are accurate, your maximum grammar score will be a band score of 5. Now, in order to get a band score of 6 in your grammar, you're required to use a mix of simple and complex sentence forms. So try to master these sentence types and use a variety of complex structures in your writing. Pause the video, read these sentences, then decide whether they're simple, compound, complex, or compound-complex. Now that we have reviewed different types of sentences, we want to go through one of the most common mistakes students make when trying to use different types of sentences. The most common problem is with parallel structures. Parallelism is important in writing because it allows a writer to achieve a sense of rhythm and order. When sentence structures are not parallel, writing sounds awkward and choppy. Parallelism is an important element in English writing, especially when you're listing or comparing and contrasting items or ideas. Parallelism means each item in a list or in a comparison follows the same grammatical pattern. For example, if you're writing a list and the first item in your list is a noun, you write all the other items as nouns also. Or if the first item is an ing word, you make all the others ing words. In these examples, the sentences in the left column are not parallel, and the ones on the right follow the rule of parallelism. Look at this chart, for example. My English conversation class is made up of Chinese, Spaniards, and Bosnian students. This is not a parallel sentence. Because Chinese is an adjective, Spaniard is a noun, and Bosnian is another adjective describing students. But this sentence, my English conversation class is made up of Chinese, Spanish, and Bosnian students, has followed the rules of parallelism because all the three words listed are adjectives and are of the same type. Now, pause the video and review the other examples of parallelism. Now, look at these examples. Please note that both these sentences are correct, but in different forms. Before you write a paper or before you take a test, you must organize your thoughts. Before you write a paper or take a test, you must organize your thoughts. In this sentence, the word before is factored in, resulting in a better version. Remember, words, phrases, and clauses that are joined by and, or, and but are often written in parallel forms. Notice the parallel structures joined by coordinators in these sentences. States regulate the noise created by motor vehicles, but not by commercial aircraft. Pesticides cannot be sold if they have harmful effects on humans, on animal life, or on the environment. You should also use parallel forms with the paired conjunctions of both and, either or, neither nor, and not only but also. Notice the parallel structures in these clauses are actually joined by coordinate conjunctions. A new law provides for both regulating pesticides and ordering their removal. Air pollutants may come either from the ocean as contaminants given off by sea life or from the engines of automobiles. If neither industry nor the public works towards reducing pollution problems, future generations will suffer. Many people are neither concerned about pollutants nor worried about their future impact. At this time, air pollution is controlled by laws passed not only to reduce pollutants at the source, but also to set standards of air quality. Now pause the video, read these sentences, and correct the errors in parallelism. In this review session, 3 paragraph types will be reviewed: narrative, process, and opinion paragraphs. Let's start with narrative paragraphs. A narrative paragraph tells a story or describes an event. For example, when you watch a movie, you're usually watching a narrative. A narrative paragraph can be fun to write because you often describe an event from your life. Apart from its fun, you need to learn how to write stories in detail for the IELTS exam as well. For example, in task 1 of the general test, for writing letters, you might be asked to write the details of a story. Look at this question as an example. You recently had a meal in a restaurant in another town. Unfortunately, you left your mobile phone in the restaurant. Write a letter to the manager. In your letter, explain what happened, describe your mobile phone, and make some suggestion about how you can get your mobile back. Now, in the first bullet point, you're asked to explain the details of what happened in that restaurant, which means you have to narrate the story. This writing lesson can also be very helpful in speaking. In many speaking topics, you need to narrate stories. This lesson also helps you to learn how to tell stories in detail. Now, let's see what the characteristics of this type of paragraph are. A narrative paragraph tells a story, has a clear beginning, a middle, and an end, uses descriptive words to help the reader better understand exact feelings and events, and there are 4 possible parts in a narrative paragraph: a topic sentence, the beginning of the story, the middle of the story, and the end of the story. The first sentence in a narrative paragraph, which is the topic sentence, explains the main idea of the story that will follow. It prepares readers for the action that will come. The beginning of the story, or the start of the action, comes after the topic sentence. It sets the scene for the story. It helps the readers understand where the story takes place and tells readers about any feelings that people may have. The middle part is where the main action or problem occurs. And finally, the end of the story gives the final action or results. If there's a problem or conflict in the story, the solution is presented here. Now pause the video, read this sample of a narrative paragraph, then answer the questions that follow. The next type of paragraph in this lesson is process paragraphs. A process paragraph shows a logical progression of stages that lead to a finished product or end result. If you're taking the academic IELTS test, you will find this lesson really useful. In this task, you might be asked to write a report on a process. An IELTS process diagram question can contain a wide variety of different types of graphics. It could be a natural process, such as the water cycle, a manufacturing process, or a diagram of a system. Now let's review what to include in this type of paragraph. A process paragraph explains a sequence or process. It presents facts and details in chronological order. It uses time words or phrases such as first, second, after that, and last. And finally, it ends with a specified word. This paragraph requires a topic sentence, supporting sentences, and a concluding sentence. The topic sentence introduces the process that the writer will explain. The middle sentences describe a sequence of steps that give detailed information about the stages of the process. These sentences may also give background details that help define the process for the reader or explain why this process is useful or necessary. The paragraph ends with a concluding sentence that restates the topic sentence using different words. This sentence may also include a suggestion, warning, or prediction to help the reader do the task more easily. To show chronological order in a process, writers use various structures. Pause the video and take a look at these structures and their examples. Now we're going to look at some sentences about the process of serving a tennis ball. Please pause the video, read the sentences, and put the sentences in the right order. Put a number in front of each sentence. Then play the video to check your answer. Now let's put the sentences together to write a paragraph and give our paragraph a title. Please notice the sequence words while we read a paragraph together. Many people think serving in tennis is difficult, but the following steps show that it is quite easy. If you're left-handed, you should substitute the word left for right in these directions. First, use your left hand to throw the ball about 3 feet in the air. The best position for the ball is just to the right of your head. At the same time, move your racket behind your shoulder with your right hand so that your elbow is pointed toward the sky. Just before the ball reaches its peak, begin to swing your racket forward as high as you can. Hit the ball into the small box on the opposite side of the net. After you hit the ball, continue swinging your racket down and across the front of your body. After you have completed the serve, your racket should be near your left knee. The last type of paragraph that we want to review in this video is opinion paragraphs. An opinion paragraph expresses the writer's thoughts about an issue. The writer presents an argument for or against something. In this type of writing, the writer often wants to get readers to have the same opinion or to change their opinion. There are different types of IELTS writing questions for which you need to give your opinion. When the question is, do you agree or disagree? This is how the topic may look. For these types of questions, you need to express your opinion. Some people say that it is possible to tell a lot about a person's culture and character from their choice of clothes. Do you agree or disagree? When you're asked, to what extent do you agree or disagree? This is what the question may look like. Some people today argue that countries should interfere less in the affairs of other nations. To what extent do you agree or disagree? Or when you're asked, do the benefits outweigh the drawbacks? This is an opinion question, where you decide which one outweighs the other one. For example, it has been suggested that primary school children should learn how to grow vegetables and keep animals. Do the advantages of this outweigh the disadvantages? And the IELTS questions that contain which is better, or is it a positive or negative development? Is it more important to? Plus, questions with should, do, or is could all be categorized as opinion questions. Let's take a look at this example. Today, many people use the internet and smartphones to transfer money to friends, family, and businesses. Is this a positive or negative development? Let's take a look at some other examples. Today, TV channels broadcast men's sports shows more than women's sports shows. Why is this the case? Should TV channels give equal showtime for each? Now, remember, an opinion paragraph is often about an issue people do not agree on. It gives the writer's opinion about the issue. It includes facts to support the writer's opinion. And it often includes a citation or note to identify the source of these facts. Sometimes it discusses the opposing opinion about the issue. And it presents a strong case that makes the reader think about the issue seriously. Now let's look at different parts of opinion paragraphs. Like other paragraphs, an opinion paragraph needs a topic sentence. A topic sentence for an opinion paragraph must express an opinion. If you cannot think of at least 2 reasons to support the opinion, it is not a good topic sentence for an opinion paragraph. Consider this topic sentence. There are several types of camels. Now, do you think this is an appropriate topic sentence? No, it's not. The problem is that this is a fact. This is an excellent topic sentence for a paragraph explaining the different kinds of camels, but it is not a good topic sentence for an opinion paragraph about camels. A better topic sentence in this context could be, camels are interesting desert animals, which expresses an opinion and not a fact. Now, pause the video, read these sentences, and choose the ones which could be good topic sentences for opinion paragraphs. To write an opinion paragraph, you need both opinions and facts. A fact is information that can be verified and proven. A fact is always true. In contrast, an opinion is what someone thinks or believes to be true. An opinion may be true or false. Now let's look at some facts and opinions. Orlando is located in Central Florida is a fact, but Orlando is a great city for people of all ages is an opinion. Orlando is home to several large theme parks is another fact, but there are many fun places to visit in Orlando, expresses the writer's opinion, and the University of Central Florida is located in Orlando is another fact about the location of this university. But the University of Central Florida is an excellent university is the writer's opinion about that university. And finally, as you can guess, the average annual temperature is 22 degrees Celsius is a fact. But I like the weather in Orlando very much is the writer's opinion about the weather in that city. Now, when you write an opinion paragraph, it is important to include facts. If you include supporting facts with examples that readers can clearly relate to, your opinion paragraph will be stronger and you may even convince readers to agree with you. Now, pause the video, read the following statements, and decide whether they are facts or opinions. As we have mentioned before, a well-written opinion paragraph includes facts to support the opinions. For example, if the topic sentence is, I believe smoking should not be allowed anywhere, the rest of the paragraph should give reasons for this opinion. One reason should be a fact. For example, according to the CDC, 443,000 people in the United States die each year from diseases related to smoking. Now, this fact clearly and strongly supports the writer's opinion. Let's read this sample opinion paragraph, find the main opinion or the topic sentence, and then find the supporting sentences, including the facts that are used. Because talking on cell phones while driving is dangerous, every country should prohibit cell phone use by drivers. The most obvious reason for this ban is to save lives. According to Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, each day in the United States, 9 people are killed and over 1,000 are injured because they talk on cell phones or text while driving. As if the first reason is not enough, a second reason is that these drivers cause accidents that kill other people. Sometimes these drivers kill other drivers, and sometimes they kill passengers or even pedestrians. These drivers do not have the right to endanger other people's lives. Finally, even in cases where there are no injuries or deaths, damage to cars from these accidents costs millions of dollars. To me, prohibiting cell phones while driving is common sense. This ban is already in effect in more than 30 countries, including Australia, Brazil, Japan, Russia, and Turkey. Other countries should do the same. We must all be careful drivers. Talking or texting on cell phones while driving is not safe. For the important reasons given here, I support a complete ban on all cell phone use by drivers worldwide. Now, the purpose of this paragraph is to tell the reader that cell phones should not be allowed while driving. This is the topic sentence, and it is an opinion. In the topic sentence, the writer states that every country should ban cell phone use while driving. And to support this opinion, three main reasons are mentioned. Firstly, over 1,000 drivers are injured each year because they talk or text on cell phones while driving. In addition, drivers cause accidents that hurt others. And finally, damage to cars costs millions of dollars. As I said before, it is a good idea to use facts to prove your opinions. I asked you to find the facts that are used in this paragraph. In this opinion paragraph, the writer has used two facts to support a ban on cell phones while driving. One fact is this sentence. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, each day in the United States, 9 people are killed and over 1,000 are injured because they talk on cell phones or text while driving. The other fact the writer has mentioned is here. This ban is already in effect in more than 30 countries, including Australia, Brazil, Japan, Russia, and Turkey. Now, to develop ideas for an opinion paragraph, there are two methods of brainstorming that work well. One method is to brainstorm using the listing technique. The second method is to create a chart. Let's use the chart. I want you to write the topic and make 2 columns underneath. In one column, list the negative ideas, and in the other, list the positive ideas. Here's an example of a negative-positive brainstorming chart. The topic is, are free college or university classes a positive or a negative thing? To write about this topic, you can see that we have drawn a table with 2 columns. It's negative and positive sides. It costs a lot of money for the taxpayers, and not everyone wants or needs free classes. Are the ideas against our topic or negative ideas? And raising the education level of people and creating more jobs could be two arguments supporting free classes. After listing the negative and positive points, you can decide which points are relevant and will be the most useful for your paragraph. Now pause the video and try to brainstorm the negative and positive aspects of using plastic, and then write a topic sentence for the topic. Students often find it difficult to express their opinion in a formal writing. In this next part, we want to review words and phrases you can use to show what your opinion is. The first 2 phrases we want to look at are "in my opinion" and "in my view." These phrases are used when giving your opinion about something. For example, their concerns are, in my opinion, fully justified. In my opinion, the cathedral is one of the world's most beautiful churches. And in my view, the court made the right decision. Now, here's an important point. Don't say, according to my opinion, when you mean, in my opinion. To give your opinion, you can also use, I think that, like in these sentences. I think that everyone should be able to own their own home. I think that hunting should be banned. When you're writing essays, it is a good idea to quote another writer to support your argument, rather than just saying, I think that blah blah blah. This will give your argument much more authority. For example, as Eric Obsbaum has pointed out, the rise of cotton industry created a huge demand for cotton goods. Now, another possible way is to say, it seems to me that you use this, especially when you have considered the situation carefully and want to give your overall opinion about it. For example, it seems to me that there is some truth in her argument. And finally, you can use I believe that about strongly held beliefs. For example, about moral issues. I believe that the death penalty is morally wrong.